course, the Canadian housing market has defied all expectations through COVID-19 and a severe pullback in the labor market and the economy just booming through the summer. So the question becomes, as we get closer and closer to fall, officially fall, what's going to happen with Canadian housing? We got a few things shoes that people have been watching that perhaps could drop. Who better to speak about this than Phil Soper, President and CEO of Royal Lepage. Phil, always great to have you on. We know the strength that we have seen in the market, and it's been remarkable considering what's going on. But as we think about deferrals perhaps coming off, we think about people struggling to get back to work, that last million or so Canadians, are there things standing in the way of this market continuing to roar?
Well, we clearly have a continuation of many more people looking for housing than we have doors to provide them. I think one of the things you mentioned will have an impact, and that's the residual unemployment. Most of the people who were laid off, furloughed, corresponded to that 30% of Canadians that don't own homes. It just worked out that way, the industries they were in and that sort of thing. But there is some overlap, and that will have some impact. I'm much less inclined to believe that the end of mortgage deferral, the mortgage deferral program, will have a material impact.
Okay, so that's interesting because we know that OSFI, the banking regulator, came out a couple of weeks ago and basically told the banks, those mortgage deferrals, we were pretty lax in terms of how you could count them. You could count them as performing loans. Well, come a certain date, and I believe it's the end of this month, we're going to start changing that. So that seemed to me a kick for the banks then to go to their customers and say, you need to start paying up. But I think Scotiabank said today that people coming off deferrals are. So you sound optimistic on that front.
I do. The big thing, I think people are using the metaphor, if you call it, the comparison to the American financial crisis. In the 2008 to 12 time period, people who weren't meeting their commitments to their banks were foreclosed on. This caused a downward spiral in that market. And home prices plummeted. It was really, really messy. The big difference with 2020 is if someone can't meet their obligations under their mortgage, they can sell their home. In America in 2008, there was no one there to buy it. In Canada in 2020, there's a lineup at the door.
Okay, so that's definitely a different dynamic. We've heard about that pent-up demand that obviously exploded through the summer months as well. And then the money got made very cheap, right? I mean, the Bank of Canada, yes. I always repeat this quote from Tiff Macklem because it just blew me off my chair when I heard it. His first, availability after his first rate decision, the Governor of the Bank of Canada said, if you have a mortgage, if you're looking to make a big purchase, you want to invest in your business, don't worry, money's going to stay cheap. It seems that people got that message.
Oh, they did. And they got the message in, because I talked about the financial crisis of a decade ago. They got the same message in 2009 when the market came roaring back to life in about May of 2009. A big part of that was the material drop in the cost of mortgage financing, drop in interest rates. They got the message loud and clear, and no group clearer than those first-time home buyers who, during the lockdown, were virtually just waiting to be able to get out there and shop for a home because they saw, firstly, home prices did drop during that 6-week period in the spring when we were under lockdown. They dropped, not a lot, 5% in Toronto maybe. So home prices are down 5 instead of up 15. And materially cheaper financing was available, and it just drew a lot of those people who had been on the sidelines. And remember, they were pushed out by the introduction in 2018 of the mortgage stress test. So we had a lot of pent-up demand in this country.
When it comes to what we're seeing in the dynamics in the market right now, obviously there's been a lot said about people leaving the city to get more land, to get bigger house. I mean, people had traditionally done that through their real estate life cycle anyway, and then the argument was COVID accelerated that. And the last numbers I saw from the Toronto Real Estate Board seemed to suggest that. I mean, detached homes in the 905 had the most sales out of all the groups.
You're absolutely right, and you're bang on in terms of the pandemic being an accelerant, but not a creator of a trend. A lot of people talk about it as if this trend was just great. Believe me, we would not have transitioned as an industry, as a company, as a national economy to work from home in 48 hours. I mean, look at you. You couldn't have run a broadcasting studio from home 5 years from now, 10 years ago, not a chance. So high-speed networks, the ability of technology like digital signatures in our industry allowed us to do things we would have had difficulty before, but they were already in place, they were already working, and those trends were already away. So work from home was driving. If you look back at some of our research, and I know we spoke on it in, say, 2017, 18, 19, we saw the generational shifts, baby boomers retiring, looking at these secondary cities. Millennials saying, I've got a second child now, I can work from home, or my employer will let me work from home more often. So let's move to Oshawa or Hope or Bellevue, as opposed to living in our condominium in the city. Now, the good news is we had critical supply shortages on both the rent and the purchase side in our cities. And so this provided something of an escape valve and kept price appreciation from bubbling over. And I think it'll do that in the future.
All right, Phil, always great to get your insight. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Greg.
Phil Soper, President and CEO of Royal